Hello and welcome. You have found a quiet place and a little time, and that is enough. If it helps, let your eyes rest closed or let your gaze soften on something still in the room. Nothing here needs your hurry. Take a slow breath in if that feels easy. Let the breath leave you without effort, like the first pale suggestion of morning touching the rim of a valley before the sun has shown its face. As you breathe out, let your shoulders soften. You do not have to hold them. Let the weight of the day ease away from your neck, down along your arms, until your hands rest as they are, unclenched, unneeded for a little while. Another breath, if you like. The space between one breath and the next does not ask anything of you. Tonight we travel only in imagination to the Boyne Valley in the east of Ireland, to a grass-covered mound older than the pyramids of Egypt, older than Stonehenge in the form we know it now, Newgrange, where winter dawn was once written into stone with such patience that the light still knows where to go. We are not rushing toward a timetable. We are leaning toward a quiet journey into Ireland's Stone Age past, the way dawn leans toward day, slowly without argument, with a pale promise that does not need to shout. Picture the hour before sunrise first, because this story loves thresholds. The sky over Meath eases from black into blue, then into a thin wash of rose along the horizon, and the fields hold their breath. Mist may lie in the folds of the land. Cattle are still. A heron might stand once in shallow water, then fold itself into shadow. The air is cool. Your breath can cool with it, little by little, until your face feels easy and your jaw unhurried. You are not climbing quickly. You are walking a path that has been walked for 5,000 years, in one sense or another. Though the shoes change and the reasons change, the ground underfoot is firm. Grass brushes softly. Small stones shift with a quiet crunch, then silence returns. The world narrows to the next step, the next slow breath, the gentle loosening of your shoulders once more, as if the valley itself were reminding you that you may carry less. Newgrange appears in the mind as a grass-covered dome, wider than a cottage, lower than a hill, deliberate in its curve. A ring of standing stones surrounds it in the modern visitor's picture, though not all of them belong to the same century as the mound's first builders. For tonight the stones can be dark teeth against the dusk, patient, not sharp. The curbstones at the base, carved in spirals and chevrons by hands that lived before history wrote their names, can rest in shadow. You do not have to see every line. The carvings have waited this long. They can wait until you are ready. The Boyne moves nearby, silver when moonlight finds it, black when moonlight hides. It flows toward the sea in its own time. You do not have to follow it to the coast. It is enough to know that water has always been near this place, that people who raised earth and stone also knew thirst and river mist, the sound of shallow water over gravel, the slow widening of the valley floor. If your mind begins to list tasks or replay conversations, you need not push those thoughts away. Notice them the way you might notice a lamp in a distant window, then return your attention to the path, to the breath, to the slack in your shoulders, and the quiet weight of your body where it rests. The night air carries earth and grass, and something older, like stone that has been rained on for millennia. If there is wind, let it be only enough to stir one leaf, one strand of hair, one cool moment against your cheek, then stillness again. You are approaching the mound so gently that you might believe the mound is turning towards you, offering its curve like a hand held open. Each step is short, each pause between steps is allowed. Your heart does not need to race. Nothing here is a contest. The builders worked in seasons we cannot fully imagine, moving earth and stone with cooperation and care, and their work has outlasted empires. It can outlast your hurry. Imagine the horizon as a line drawn faintly, forgiving. Imagine the valley breathing beneath you, a rise and fall so slow you almost cannot feel it, steady as centuries. Fields lie in stripes and gentle folds, separated by hedges that have thickened with years. None of this asks you to decide anything. It is scenery for the breath, background for the slow loosening of the neck, the unclenching of thoughts that have held their shape too long. If you wish, notice the place where your shoulder meets your arm, a small junction that often carries tension without announcement. You do not have to fix it. Breathe toward it the way you might breathe warmth into cold hands and let the muscles answer in their own time. The mound does not rush the thaw, neither should you. Perhaps you feel fabric soft against your skin or the weight of a blanket. Perhaps you feel only air moving across your cheek as you breathe. Each sensation can be welcome without being studied. Let them arrive and change slowly without a plot. There is a kindness in arriving somewhere that does not require proof. You do not need a ticket in this telling. You do not need to know every date, every measurement, every debate among archaeologists. Your presence is enough. Your willingness to walk in thought without straining. Your permission to be tired in a world that often treats rest as optional. The Irish name for the great tomb is Brú na Buniu, the mansion or dwelling of the Boyne, and older poetry sometimes calls this landscape by other names that gather mist and light around them. Newgrange itself is the anglicised name that became common on maps and on tongues. Names layer here the way soil layers, each age adding a syllable without erasing what came before. When you imagine the horizon again, let it be wide enough that your thoughts do not bump the edges. Let there be silence between sentences in your mind. If a memory rises, let it rise like a bird, circle once, and glide away. You can always return to the path, to the breath, to the softening at the tops of the arms where the day used to sit. The night deepens by degrees too small to count one by one. You might not notice until the sky feels closer, softer, more like a blanket lowered than a door shut tight. That is the kind of darkness that helps sleep, not the kind that startles. You are allowed to trust it a little. Let your hands rest where they are. Let your feet feel supported whether you are lying down or sitting. The body knows how to soften when the mind stops insisting. Give it a little trust. Another breath. Shoulders wide and loose, as if someone kind had placed warm hands there and said, without words, "You may rest now." We are nearly at the kind of arrival that needs no gate. Newgrange, in story and in science, is a passage tomb aligned to the winter solstice sun, a chamber built of stone and hope, a place where the dead were laid with honour and where the living marked the sky's slow turning. Tonight it is simply the place you have come to in your mind, unhurried, welcomed by quiet. The grass on the mound is cool with dew now, perhaps. The sound of your movement is minimal. The night holds its own sounds, distant and soft, nothing that asks you to startle. If you hear anything sharp in the room around you, let it pass through you like a bird crossing the sky, there and gone. You can feel, if you like, a slight widening in your chest as you breathe, as if the valley had made a little more room inside you. You do not have to hold that feeling. Let it spread and fade, the way light fades, the way stories begin in dimness and become clear only gradually. And now that you have arrived, not with a shout but with a long exhale, we can let the mound tell its story in fragments, the way old places prefer to be heard, when the listener is safe and warm and ready to drift. There will be stones and solstice light and the long patience of winter, but all of it will come gently, like footsteps on soft ground, like someone speaking in the next room, voice low enough that you do not have to lean forward to catch every word. Rest here a moment at the edge of the mound, or on the grass before the entrance, wherever your mind has placed you. Feel the earth steady beneath you. Feel your breath steady within you. When you are ready, the story will begin, not to excite you, but to accompany you. The way a river accompanies a boat that is not in any rush to reach the sea. Long before Ireland's monasteries and high crosses, before the great tales were written down in ink on vellum, people in the Boyne Valley raised one of the most remarkable stone structures in Europe. They were farmers who cleared woodland, planted crops, tended cattle, and still found energy and cohesion enough to heap earth over a carefully built chamber, to ring the mound with carved stones, to cut a passage aligned so precisely that once a year, at midwinter, a thin beam of sunrise could slip along the stone corridor and touch the inner darkness with gold. We call them Neolithic now, meaning New Stone Age, a label that sounds cold until you remember it only means they lived richly with tools and skills we still respect. They shaped flint, they ground grain, they traded perhaps over surprising distances. They buried some of their dead with care inside monuments that took generations to finish. A fact that speaks of continuity, of belief, of the sense that a community extends backward and forward beyond a single life. Newgrange sits within a cluster of wonders. Knowth, with its 2 passages and its extraordinary collection of carved art, lies nearby. Dowth, older in feeling, more ruinous in places, shares the same river valley. Together, they form a landscape that UNESCO and Irish heritage guardians protect as Brú na Buniu, a World Heritage Site, a phrase that sounds official until you translate it into grass and river mist and the quiet weight of stone that outlasts argument. Archaeology has replaced myth in some explanations and enriched myth in others. The mound is roughly 85 meters wide, depending on how you measure the spread of earth and stone, and the passage runs about 19 meters into the heart, long enough that darkness feels complete until light. On the right morning proves otherwise. The chamber is corbelled, stone layered upon stone inward until a cap closes the roof. Engineering without metal girders, without engines, only patience and measurement, and the human refusal to believe that a roof must be made of wood alone. The entrance stone, famous for its spirals, greets the world like a door carved by someone who trusted pattern more than portrait. Spirals repeat on curbstones around the mound, on interior slabs, on stones at Knowth, as if the valley had agreed on a visual language we still interpret gently, never finally. Some scholars speak of sun symbols, of eyes, of journeys between worlds. For sleep, the spirals can be paths you walk in your mind without arriving anywhere sharp, curves that return you to calm the way breath returns you to calm. Inside, in imagination, the chamber widens into a cruciform space, 3 alcoves opening off a centre, stone basins that once held remains or offerings or both. You do not need to see bones tonight. You can think instead of respect, of the dead housed in cool darkness while the living continued their seasons above, planting, harvesting, bearing children, telling stories whose words we will never hear exactly as they sounded. Winter solstice at Newgrange has become famous in our time. For a few minutes around dawn, if the sky is clear, sunlight enters the roof box above the passage entrance, travels the stone corridor, and illuminates the chamber's heart. Cloud cancels the drama, yet the alignment remains true, a fact carved into the architecture itself. The builders watched the sky for years, perhaps for lifetimes, until they trusted their mathematics of shadow and light. You do not need to stand in the lottery queue that now decides which visitors enter on solstice morning. Tonight you can imagine the beam as a thread of warmth, not a spotlight in the eyes, gold sliding along cool stone, dust motes slow as stars. The chamber waking for a moment, as if the sun had remembered a promise made long ago. Then the light withdraws, and darkness returns, gentle, complete, not cruel, only cyclical. The 19th century brought rediscovery and controversy in the usual human mixture. Landowners, antiquarians, excavators, and later professional archaeologists peeled back centuries of collapse and soil slip, documented what they found, argued, refined. Newgrange was not always the tidy mound you see in photographs. It was damaged, dug into, misunderstood, loved, protected, restored with care, that future generations may refine again. History is not a straight line. It is a river with eddies. Modern concrete supports parts of the interior to stabilize what time loosened. A practical fact that bothers some romantics and reassures others. For our gentle path, the concrete can be invisible, or it can be understood as another layer of human care. People in the last century deciding that wonder should not fall on the heads of wonder's guests. Either way, the stones remain old. The light remains old in its angle. The river still moves. Irish mythology later mapped sacred stories onto the Boyne landscape. The river itself is named for the goddess Beún. In one telling, a figure associated with water, secrecy, transformation, the kind of story that fits a valley where mist rises and boundaries between worlds feel soft. The Dhu, a father god of the Tua Je Danon, is linked in medieval literature to a mound called She in Boroshgu, sometimes identified by tradition with Newgrange, a she mound, a dwelling beside our own, separated by glamour, more than by miles. You do not need to sort every identification. Myth and archaeology are neighbours here. They do not always share the same fence. What matters for tonight is the mood, that a passage into earth could be imagined as a doorway, that winter light could be imagined as a message, that the dead were not discarded but housed, that the sky was watched with reverence rather than panic. The Effie Anna and the heroic cycles need not thunder here. Battles can wait for other tellings. Newgrange asks for a slower drum, the beat of seasons, the scrape of antler, pick on soil, the hauling of a curbstone into place while someone's child slept nearby on a blanket woven from wool and patience. Seasonal life framed the Neolithic world. Spring brought new growth. Autumn brought harvest. Winter brought shortening days, and the fear and hope bundled together at solstice. The turning point when light begins, almost imperceptibly at first, to return. To build a monument that catches the first rays of the returning sun is to say, without modern vocabulary, we believe morning comes back. It is a lullaby aimed at the whole community. Cattle were wealth. Grain was survival. The Boyne Valley's soil, glacial and generous, supported populations large enough for ambitious work. Labour divided by skill, by strength, by ritual role, perhaps, though we should not pretend we know every social detail. We know enough to marvel without squeezing the past into a single simple story. Art at Newgrange and Nowth includes chevrons, zigzags, lozenges, shapes that feel like water, like eyes, like woven cloth pressed into stone. Some carvings catch rain, some catch moonlight. Guides in daylight point with careful lasers of attention. You, tonight, can let the art be texture, not examination. Patterns that repeat the way waves repeat, never quite the same, always familiar. The passages narrow in places, low in places, an architecture that asks the living body to bow, to yield, to enter the underworld of stone with humility. You are not crawling there now. You are imagining the cool air, the faint smell of earth, the silence so complete that your own heartbeat becomes a sound You notice, then release. Humility in this story is not shame. It is the comfort of being small under a vault that has stood since before your grandparents' lines began. Offerings found in excavations speak of continuity. Roman coins, for example, dropped centuries after the tomb was ancient. Evidence that people still treated the mound as meaningful, still reached toward it with gestures their own age understood. The past at Newgrange is not a closed book. It is a well people keep visiting. If you are still listening, let your listening be easy. You do not have to follow every thread to the end. The story is a braided river. You can float on one strand and let the others flow beside you. Your shoulders remain soft. Your face is smooth. The room around you is allowed to be dim, safe, steady. Think of the builders not as shadows in a textbook, but as people who laughed sometimes, who worried about weather, who mourned, who sang without leaving sheet music. They placed this stone here, that stone there, and the alignment held. That is a kind of love expressed in geometry. Rain on the mound sounds softer than rain on a roof of slate. It gathers in the grass and slips away in threads toward the river. A small, faithful journey repeated across centuries. Frost in winter makes a thin crust that melts when the sun rises. A daily kindness even when the solstice beam does not come. The tomb's interior stays cool in summer and cool in winter. A steady temperature that feels like patience made physical, as if the earth had decided to keep one room calm while weather argued outside. Antler picks, stone axes, ropes made from plant fiber or hide. These were the tools of the slow work. Experiment must have lived beside tradition. A lintel tested, a passage measured, a mistake corrected not with shame, but with another season of effort. You do not need to picture every technique. It is enough to feel the cumulative nature of the task. Many hands, many evenings, many conversations lowered out of respect for those who slept inside the stone. The Boyne Valley's archaeology includes not only the great tombs but smaller sites, hints of houses, fields, the ordinary infrastructure of a world we glimpse through post holes and burnt grain. Newgrange rises from that fabric the way a chapel might rise from a village, not separate from daily bread, but connected to it, an answer to questions people carry when someone they love no longer breathes beside them. Grief in any age asks for a place to go. The passage tomb offered coolness, containment, a sense that the dead remained near enough to be honoured. Later ages sometimes told the mound's story with brighter colours. Gods moving across the sky, lovers crossing forbidden boundaries, rivers named and renamed. Those layers do not erase the older silence inside the chamber. They rest on top of it, the way new grass rests on old roots. You can hold both truths without squeezing them into one sentence. Human engineering and human longing, stone and story. The measurable angle of sunrise and the unmeasurable comfort of believing that light returns. Children who visit in daylight often ask simple questions that scholars answer with paragraphs. Tonight you can keep the simplest answers. People built it. People cared. People watched the sky. People rested their dead with tenderness. The rest can wait for another mind, another afternoon. Another book opened in sunlight. Sleep asks for fewer words. Not because words are enemies, but because the body deserves a turn to speak in its own quiet language of slowing pulse and softening muscle. Even the visitor center, with its models and screens, is a kind of reverence translated into modern grammar. Some people prefer to skip the building and walk straight toward the grass. Others linger over diagrams until the mound feels less mysterious and more human, which is its own comfort. Neither approach is wrong. The valley receives both kinds of footsteps with the same patience it offers rain. If you imagine the solstice crowd in winter, hats and scarves, breath rising, voices kept low out of respect, you need not join them in feeling cold. You can stay warm where you are and borrow only the shared hush, the moment when the sky thins and the possibility of gold appears at the passage's mouth. Possibility, without guarantee, is a gentle teacher. It asks you to wait without clenching. There is a way of seeing Ireland's ancient East that treats separate monuments as verses in one poem. Tara rises to the west of the Boyne tombs, a later centre of assembly and kingship. Yet the human instinct connects them. The need to mark time, to bury with honour, to stand while living in relationship with light and shadow. From Newgrange, in imagination, you can sense other rises of earth, other rings of stone, other places where people looked up and felt small in a comforting way. Small inside something larger than argument. Nouth's satellite mounds, Douth's damaged grandeur, the river threading them together, all suggest a landscape planned in conversation rather than in isolation. Perhaps rival groups competed. Perhaps kin cooperated. Perhaps seasons of peace allowed work that seasons of tension interrupted. Tonight, we do not need a verdict. We need only the image of a valley where stone and earth were shaped with intention, where art was carved not for haste, but for duration. Winter solstice alignment is the headline, yet astronomers and archaeologists also discuss lunar possibilities, calendrical hints, the moon's slower rhythms crossing the same sky the sun owns by day. You can let those debates be distant, like voices on another bank of the river, while you stay on this bank with grass and quiet. What remains beautiful without dispute is that someone looked up for a long time, wrote what they saw into stone and position, and trusted future eyes to understand. The roof box, a stone lintel opening above the passage mouth, is a practical marvel dressed as mystery. It admits a narrow band of light at a particular angle. It keeps rain from flooding the corridor more than weather already does. Function and symbol marry here the way they often marry in old craft. A door is a door and also an invitation. Inside the chamber, the three alcoves once received human remains. Some cremated, some inhumed, practices that shifted across centuries of use. Death, for the Neolithic imagination we can barely touch, may have been a transition rather than an end, a journey along a passage similar to the one the living walk when they bow into the mound. Sleep rhymes with that idea without copying it. You two are moving along a passage tonight, not into fear, but into rest. Quartz fragments, white and gleaming, were part of the mound's revetment in the modern reconstruction based on archaeological evidence. A bright colour around the grass that catches winter light and makes the hill visible from a distance, like a lantern low on the ground. Some critics argue details of the rebuild, scholars refine. For your drifting mind, the quartz can be moonlight stored in stone, a gentle brightness that does not glare. Sheep graze the mound in management seasons, living lawnmowers with soft mouths. A detail so ordinary it almost makes you smile. Except we keep the tone even and calm, so let it be simply pleasing. Life goes on above the chamber where the dead rest. Grass roots find cracks. Rain finds paths. The earth continues its slow work of wearing and renewing. Visitors today approach on paths and tours. Hear guides speak of carbon dates and carving techniques. Stand in the chamber while staff demonstrate electric lights that mimic solstice. A kindness for those who cannot come at dawn in December. The electric light is not the sun, yet it carries intention to show the angle, to honour the builder's eye. You can be glad such tools exist and still prefer tonight the imagined beam, slower, softer, yours alone. The Boyne's floodplain has shifted over millennia. The river's voice has not grown louder in any moral sense, only in the ears of those who live beside it now with bridges and roads. Ancient ears heard water over gravel, wind in willow, perhaps the call of cranes, the rustle of AW rocks in older times before those great cattle vanished from Ireland. Soundscapes change, the need for calm sound remains. Carvings on Curbstone 52 at Knowth have been read as a lunar map by some researchers, dismissed by others. Newgrange's art refuses a single caption. Spirals may be snakes, suns, journeys, decorative joy without utilitarian excuse. Not every ancient mark was a code. Some marks may have been beauty for beauty's sake, the way you might hum without lyrics. If you imagine dawn at Newgrange without hurrying the night you are in, let the light arrive as a suggestion first, a thinning of black into blue along the passage's line, a warmth that touches the stone floor inch by inch, patient as honey spreading on bread. The chamber's heart brightens. Dust floats. Then the gold recedes and the cool returns. Not as punishment, as rhythm. Your own body is ordinary in the best way, trustworthy in its need for rest, capable of softening when you exhale, when you let the shoulders drop, when you allow the jaw to hang easy. The mound is not separate from that permission. It is an image of something steady receiving you, something built across lives, across grief and hope, across winters that felt endless until they did not. Seasons turn on the Boyne as they turn everywhere. Spring mud and new leaves, summer grass thick along the river, autumn colour thinning to winter grey. Tourist buses come and go, scholars publish. Children run on paths they will remember as adults. The tomb remains. Grass covered, quietly spectacular. If you find yourself inventing scenes, a woman smoothing earth along the mound's flank, a man testing a lintel's fit, elders watching the sky at evening, marking where the sun left the rim, let those scenes be watercolour, edges soft, details willing to blur. You are not being tested. You are being accompanied. Modern Ireland has embraced Brú na Buniu as emblem and responsibility, a place that draws the world and asks the world to tread softly. Conservation science monitors damp algae, wear from footsteps, the thousand small pressures love creates when too many loving feet want nearness. Solutions arrive in boardrooms and barns, always imperfect, always sincere in intent. You do not need to rehearse management plans now. You can simply inwardly agree that some thresholds should be crossed slowly, voices lowered, hearts willing to learn. The passage's bend blocks direct sight from entrance to chamber, a subtle architecture of mystery. You must commit before you see. Sleep has a similar quality. You commit to lying down, to darkness, to trusting the body before you know exactly what rest will bring. The parallel does not need to be pressed. It can rest beside you like a second blanket. Birdsong along the Boyne includes herons, kingfishers and their flashes of colour, wrens in the undergrowth, rooks commenting from high branches. At night the sound thins. Owls may call or perhaps not. Silence becomes a texture, full rather than empty, like deep water. You can float there a while, listening to the absence of hurry. If thoughts arrive about climate, about time running short, about the fragility of heritage, you can set those thoughts on the grass beside you like small bundles you need not lift until morning. Worry is human. So is care. Tonight care can look like rest gathering strength for another day's attention. The Neolithic sky was darker than ours, less rinsed by electric glow. Stars would have spoken more plainly to eyes that slept and woke by natural light. Solstice alignment in such a sky may have felt like conversation rather than calculation. You can imagine those stars without naming constellations. Let them be salt scattered on black cloth, a quiet luxury. Irish language place names around the valley soften the map. Drich, Had, Balye, fields called after families, after shapes, after saints who arrived much later than the tomb, yet claimed no ownership of the stones inside the mound. Layers of naming are like layers of soil. Each one grows over the last without erasing it entirely. When you think of Ireland from far away, you might picture cliffs, city lights, music in a pub. Meath asks for a gentler picture. Inland, patient, fertile. A geography where great tombs sit like calm thoughts in a busy mind, reminding you that some things take longer than a single life and still remain kind. Fog in the Boyne Valley can make the mound seem to float, a green island in a white sea, distances erased until the world feels smaller and kinder. Photographers love that light. Sleep loves it too, because it blurs edges the way drifting thoughts blur edges, until outlines soften and nothing demands sharp focus. If your mind wants sharp focus anyway, you can aim it at a single spiral, one curve, one breath, and let the rest of the scene stay mist. The winter solstice alignment is precise, yet the sun's path shifts over millennia in ways astronomers measure with calm charts. The Neolithic builders aimed at their sky, not ours. The difference is small in human lifetimes, larger in geologic time, a reminder that even stone monuments ride on a planet that moves, slowly, faithfully, without asking permission. You do not need to hold that idea tightly. Let it brush past you like a cool breeze. Interesting, not urgent. Fieldwork at Brew na Bunyu has given us beads, pottery fragments, tools, the humble objects that say, life was ordinary as well as sacred. Someone drank from a bowl, someone mended a cloak, someone swept earth from a threshold. The tomb's grandeur does not cancel those dailynesses, it grows from them, the way a long marriage grows from small kindnesses repeated until they become a structure. Guides sometimes speak of acoustics, how sound behaves in the chamber, how a drum or a voice might carry differently in stone. You can listen for that idea without needing a demonstration. Let it be a metaphor for how some spaces change the texture of speech, how a cathedral hush differs from a field's hush, how the passage tomb might have made certain words feel heavier, more careful, more worth saying slowly. The color of the grass changes with light. Silver under moon, deep green under noon cloud, gold brown when summer dries the blades. The mound wears those colors the way you wear moods, lightly without becoming any single one of them forever. Rest works the same way. You pass through shallow sleep and deeper silence, through dreams and dreamless intervals, without needing to name each layer as you go. If you think of other passage tombs on the island, Car Moor, Car Keel, Loughru's scattered hills, you can imagine them as quiet relatives, not copies, each place answering local ground and local sky. Ireland's Neolithic map is a constellation, not a single star. Newgrange shines bright in the public mind because it is generous with its story, because solstice light is easy to love, because access has been cared for. The other sites hold their own gentleness, their own patience, their own grass and stone. Evening over the Boyne often brings rooks, their conversations unrushed, their flight loose and circling, as if the air belonged to them and they were willing to share. Night replaces those sounds with smaller ones, or with none. The mound does not need birds to be meaningful. It needed people once, and now it needs only continuity. Rain, root, footstep, scholarship, story, all of it woven into one long present that includes you. Listening, breathing, letting your shoulders soften again as the tale curves toward its closing. We have walked art and astronomy, archaeology and myth without lifting a shovel, without turning on a harsh lamp. The mound remains, your breath remains, slower perhaps than when you began. Your shoulders, if you check them, can soften again, a little more as if the earth had asked for nothing but your weight, honestly given. The story does not need an ending in the way a door needs a lock. It needs only a place where the telling thins, where words become fewer, where the landscape you imagined stays with you without asking you to hold it tight. You can picture the passage as a gentle slope in the mind, not steep, not frightening, only a slow approach towards stillness. The way each exhale approaches the next inhale, without hurry. Return, if you like, to the grass-covered mound under a sky that is fully deepened into night. The stars are there, whether you see them or not. The Boyne moves below, a darker line through darker fields. Somewhere an otter slides into water, but you need not follow. Somewhere a stone still holds a spiral carved by a hand you will never meet. And that is enough knowledge for now. You are not obligated to walk the passage again in your mind. You can remain outside, where the air is wide, where the mound is a gentle rise against the stars, where the standing stones stand like quiet companions who do not require conversation. The chamber inside can become warmth without detail, a memory of gold light that asks nothing of you but presence. Let your face relax again, let your brow smooth. If your tongue has been pressing against the roof of your mouth, let it drop. If your teeth have been touching, let a little space come between them. These small releases matter. They are the spiral carved on the body's own stone, a pattern that says, yes, you may let go. Your arms may feel heavier, your legs may feel longer, sinking slightly into whatever holds you. Your heartbeat need not announce itself. It can work in the background, steady as water welling in a spring too deep to see. The room you are in is still the room, walls, door, familiar objects, you know without looking. Newgrange was only a journey of the mind, yet the calm it borrowed from a real valley may stay with you, a residue of river mist, a sense of light returning on schedule, even when clouds hide it. If thoughts arrive about tomorrow, you can set them down on the grass beside you, like small bundles you will not carry until morning. They will wait. The mound has waited longer than any single day. If worries insist, do not argue. Breathe slowly, soften the shoulders once more, and imagine mist covering the worry the way mist covers a field. Not erasing it, but making edges gentle, until it is easier to look away. Sound, if it comes from the world outside your rest, can be folded into the landscape you built. A car passing becomes a distant ripple on a road you are not walking. A door closing becomes a shepherd gathering lambs. A voice becomes wind in riverside reeds, unintelligible and therefore harmless. You do not have to work hard at this. The mind, when it is tired in the right way, likes to translate sharpness into softness. There is a tradition in Irish storytelling of leaving a little unsaid, a space for the listener's own spirit to step in. Consider this that space. Newgrange remains in Ireland, real, visitable, guarded by scholarship and love. You remain where you are, real, deserving of rest. Between those two truths is a wide field, and you may lie down in it as long as you wish. Your breath can find its own rhythm now, slower than speech, slower than thought, closer to the rhythm of tides or seasons, something you do not control and do not need to control. Inhale, if there is inhale. Exhale, always. The exhale is the body's yes to letting go. Nothing in this recording asks you to remember measurements. Nothing asks you to prove you paid attention. The history will remain in the world, in books, in guides, in the quiet chamber of stone, whenever you wish to return to it with waking curiosity. For now, curiosity may rest too. It may close like a book left face down on a chair, pages open but unattended, waiting for morning light without impatience. You might think of Newgrange one day, under a real winter sky, boots on a path, breath visible in cold air, waiting with others for a dawn that might or might not show its beam. If that day comes, may it be gentle. May the crowd feel kind. May you find a moment to stand still and feel how small a single life is, and how quietly meaningful, like one carved line among thousands, none of them competing to be the only line. Tonight, you have done something similar in imagination, and that is enough work for the dark hours. The room around you can grow softer at the edges. Sounds can grow distant, as if heard from the bottom of a well lined with wool. Light, if any light remains, can dim behind your eyelids, until it is only a memory of light, a pale wash, harmless. Your thoughts may fragment into images without story. A spiral, a river stone, a strip of gold on grey rock, a hand resting open. Let them fragment. Story is optional at the door of sleep. If you are already sliding towards sleep, the words can become texture without meaning. Low murmur, harmless noise in the room, a small kindness leaving your mind free to wander into dream. If you are still awake, there is no failure in that either. Resting without sleeping is still rest. The mound does not judge the visitor who sits a while before returning home. Notice if it feels natural, the place where your back meets what supports you. Notice without fixing. Notice the hips heavy and willing to be still. Notice the feet, whether they are crossed or side by side, covered or bare, and let them be exactly as they are. There is no correct posture for sleep in this story, only a gradual agreement between body and gravity, a treaty signed in slow breaths. The mound in your imagination can lower itself until it is no taller than a pillow, until the whole monument becomes a metaphor so gentle it dissolves into warmth. Metaphors are allowed to dissolve here. History remains in books and in soil. Your rest does not compete with scholarship. It borrows a landscape and then returns it, softened, like a blanket folded at the foot of a bed. Moon phases can turn above the valley without your tracking them. New moon, full moon, the thin curl of light, all of it distant, all of it slow. You do not have to look up. The body has its own tides, its own rise and fall of attention, its own way of sliding toward dream when the mind stops gripping the edges of the day. If counting helps some people sleep, you need not count tonight. If silence helps, let the next sentences arrive like faraway surf. Rhythm without demand. If voice helps, let it be a voice that expects nothing from you. Not even listening, only companionship. The grass you imagined can flatten into linen. The stars can dim into the back of your eyelids. The boyne can become the sound of your own blood moving, soft circulation, faithful, quiet. The solstice beam can become the simple fact of morning somewhere ahead of you, not urgent, not demanding you rise before you are ready, only existing as a promise the sky keeps. And if you notice tension returning, a small nod at the shoulder, a tightness at the jaw, you can meet it the way the mound meets wind without argument. Another breath, another softening. The night is long enough for many small releases. You are not behind schedule. There is no schedule. Night continues. The island turns in the dark. Other listeners, other rooms, other burdens and joys all exist. But they do not need your attention now. You have given what you could to the day. You borrowed a quiet story about a passage of stone where light still finds its way once a year, where people long ago looked up and chose patience over panic. Let the story dissolve like mist. Let the mound become a curve under your hand, then nothing but warmth. Let your shoulders fall, finally, completely, as if the earth had whispered that the weight you carried was always allowed to be set down. Whatever tomorrow asks of you can wait beyond the horizon you imagined, beyond the river's bend, beyond the carved stone at the passage mouth. The night belongs to recovery, to the simple truth that bodies mend in darkness. Minds sort themselves in dream. And history keeps its own patient hours without requiring you to watch the clock. Sleep, if sleep is near. Drift, if drift is what comes first. The history will still be there when you wake. Patient as Newgrange, old as breath, waiting without urgency, the way the land always waits for morning. Good night, G.